Okay, let's get started. Hello, welcome. My name is Doug Crawford. I'm both a licensing officer, which means I manage a portfolio of patents and inventions for the university, and I'm also the program director for the I-Corps site here at UCI. This is Dr. Sophia Lin, got her PhD in chemical engineering a few years ago as a graduate of the I-Corps national program, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And in addition to running the I-Corps program with me here at UCI Applied Innovation, she also runs the POP, or Proof of Product Grant program here at Applied Innovation. So we're going to go over tonight what this program's about, what you can expect, and what our expectations will be of you if you decide to apply and join. So welcome, UCI Applied Innovation, I-Corps I-Corps orientation. This is called evidence-based entrepreneurship because you're going to be getting market data and using that evidence or data to help build your business model, not business plan. We'll get into that a little bit later. So what is this NSF I-Corps program? It's based on the fact that NSF spends several $1 billion a year, and Congress came to them one day and said, hey, anything happen with that money we gave you other than a bunch of research? Have any companies or new technologies come out of this? And they said, hold on, we'll get back to you in just a couple minutes. So they came up with this I-Corps program for researchers who want to move their technology from the lab to the marketplace and aren't exactly sure how to do that. And so there's a couple of tools and methods that come along with this program that are extraordinarily helpful in doing this, building it. So why are we doing this? At the top says top 20 reasons startups fail. I think that's for the next slide. So you're here at UCI, so you clearly have gotten to a certain level of quality. There's no question that the quality of your work is very, very high. Now the big, hard, ugly question, who cares? Other than your mom and dad, right? Now what this program helps you do is find out who cares about what aspects of your invention technology using a couple of tools. Like I said, it's called the Business Model Canvas and Customer Discovery. So why do we do this? So you don't fail. The small print up there says 42% of startup companies fail because of a lack of market need. Now, I'm going to disagree with that a little bit. It's not necessarily a lack of market need, but it was a lack of identified market need. You start out with an idea that everybody with hands, the whole world needs my technology and is waiting for my phone call. That's not the truth, I'm sorry to say. But most startups fail because they haven't adequately identified who wants my stuff for what reason. So what we want you to do is fail fast and start out with some assumptions that these people want my technology for this reason, and then you're going to go out and test it. So we're going to very briefly talk about the difference between a company and a startup. You're not doing a company. Companies execute on a known business plan with known customers, known products, services, etc. It's simply a matter of execution. Procter & Gamble knows who their customers are, knows what their products are, but a startup company, you're in the search mode. You're searching for a repeatable and scalable model so you can sell products to a large variety of people. So we are searching, we're not executing. Okay, so we're not going to do the standard business plans with spreadsheets and so forth. We're essentially trying to figure out through a business model who cares about what we're working on and precisely what. So how do we do that? We use something called the Business Model Canvas, which is simply a tool, a spreadsheet almost, to hang your ideas and test your hypotheses. And this is what it looks like. And in the, I don't think we have a handout for this, but there are references we can show you. This is the canvas that you hang your ideas on. I'm going to go through these different squares and what they mean to you. So that's going to be very hard for you all to read. Let's see how we go through this. The right-hand side is the marketplace view. You're talking about customer relationships, segments, channels, revenues. And in the middle, this is really the most important part. It's called the value proposition. This is what a company or a startup offers to the general public or a specific customer segment. And this is essentially what a customer would say, this is why I bought that product. This is why I engaged with this company for that service. Not what you think it is, but what the customer would actually say. Gosh, my eyes are getting bad. What problems are you solving? And what needs are you satisfying? That's what a value proposition is. Then we have customer segment. These are the people who want to buy your product and service. So, and remember this, who are your most important customers? Meaning, who are the ones that really want your technology the most? You want to start with trying to identify them. Don't try to capture the entire world. Start with the ones that really need your stuff, and then bridge out, build from there. So, and now we'll go through these other squares. Customer relationships. It's as simple as how do you get, keep, and grow your customer base? Then they have channels. How do your customers want to be approached? How do you reach them both in terms of letting them know that you and your technology exist, and also how do you physically deliver the technology to them? Then there's the revenue section down here. How will you make money? What is the model? What are the pricing tactics? That's way down the road. Don't worry about that just yet. Then we go to the left side, and that's more of the internal operations. Once you have this value proposition and customer segment figured out, which is we'll get to is product market fit, then you can start thinking about some of the other things that you should be doing and working on. Key partners. Who else do you need to be working with? Key activities, what do you need to be doing? And then resources, what do you need in terms of money, people, etc., in order to get those activities done? And then finally, you look at the cost. Many times people will start out with the cost and revenue model. Says, hey, we can make this for 25% of what the current market sells this for. That's not necessarily, and oftentimes that's the wrong way to go. For example, someone give me an idea of how much does it cost for a craft beer in a brew pub? Do you drink beer?
$8.
Okay. How much?
$8 a pint.
And how much do you think it costs to make?
$2.
Yeah, it's probably like 50 cents. Yeah, it's totally cheap. But you're willing to pay the $8 because that's what it's worth. The value is to you. So you don't think about cost plus, because you'll ultimately just get into some type of commodity type pricing and someone else will eat your lunch by executing better. You want to get money based on the value, not the cost. Okay, so what we focus on here in the I-Core Site program, which is a short 4 weeks, is the value proposition and customer segment, or more simply, product market fit. So, you want to find out who cares, that's your customer segment or segments, and what do they care about? This sounds very straightforward and simple, and ultimately is, but it takes a decent amount of work to actually prove with market data that this is what people want from you and your technology. You start out with assumptions or guesses, but then go challenge those guesses by conducting a test called customer discovery, getting out of the building, getting off of campus, and talking to people other than your immediate colleagues, friends, and family. So we've worked on product market fit through direct hands-on market research. Why? So you don't fail, or actually you fail fast. Most teams are going to start out with this guess that these people really want my technology for this reason. Then you go out there and find out, gosh, they don't really care that this is lighter or cheaper or faster. They care about what that lighter, cheaper, faster means to them in their daily jobs as they're trying to get a particular job done. Everyone has a job that they need to get done. How can you make their life easier through your technology? So how do we identify our value proposition and customer segments? Customer discovery. That's a fancy way of saying getting out of the building and talking to a lot of different people. In this course, you do 10 customer discovery in-face interviews with people in your target customer segments each week, testing the hypothesis about what do they care about. So who are your customers and what do they want? How do you find that out? You ask them. You don't talk about your technology, actually. You talk about the problems and opportunities in that technology area and try to find out what's important to them, how do they buy certain things, why do they adopt new technologies, why would they not adopt a new technology, what's scary for them. Human factor is a big component of this in-face customer discovery interviews that we're talking about. So I've got to start with my famous scientist because I'm a physics guy, and that's fine. This is, in general, when we're looking for a new law, we start by following a certain process. We guess. We simply guess. So then you take that guess, and then you use the scientific method. Guess or hypothesis, test, here we call it ask, that's the customer discovery interview process, and you listen to what they have to say. Then you compare what the customer or the market said to you to what you thought, and then you compare those two, and then you adjust your theory or hypothesis to match the data. Because guess what? If the data and the theory don't match, you've either got bad data or an incorrect theory. Chances are your theory is slightly off, so you want to pivot or adjust or adapt so that what the market's telling you is exactly what you think. So it's going to require an adjustment on your part. If you do 20, 30 customer discovery interviews and find out nobody cares about the speed of your widget, then guess what? Chances are no one cares about the speed of your widget. You want to think about what do they care, and do we have the ability to deliver what the customer or the market actually wants. Okay, so we go back to the product market fit, which is the whole focus of our time here in the I-Corps program. So this sounds really harsh, but the customers don't care about your technology. I don't care about what's inside this thing on my wrist. I know that it's a watch and it tells time and I can use it as a stopwatch, etc. But I don't care about how it works inside at all. I really don't. Some people do care about certain technology, widget type things and how they work. But for the most part, you have to figure out what do they want to get done and how can you help them get there? What value, I'm going to sound like a broken record, what value or how do you make their life better or easier or simpler with your technology? So we're going to use a made-up example here of hydrophobic and antimicrobial adhesives. We're going to play this game a little bit later in the classes too. So some researchers came up with a hydrophobic antimicrobial adhesive, and they thought, boy, hospitals would really like to have this because they could save money by reusing certain bandage type devices and reduce medical waste costs unlike traditional Band-Aids. Well, that was their hypothesis, that was their idea, and you can imagine what they might have found. What they did is, so they put up their value propositions. Oh, it's hydrophobic. Oh, everybody wants hydrophobic. What the hell does that mean? It just means it doesn't like water. But that's a technical jargony term. It's antimicrobial. Well, what does that actually mean to someone who's got a wound? Antimicrobial doesn't translate into value at all directly. It's reusable. It saves money. And who's going to want it? Hospitals and doctors. So this is the format of the reports that you'll be giving every week. So we started out with a hypothesis or guess that hospitals want to reduce medical waste costs. And so they went to hospitals and talk about waste costs. As you can guess from a practical standpoint, it's not that big of a deal. And there's actually kind of a huge stigma about reusing anything in a hospital. But what they did find is that certain patients and certain caregivers found that the removal of a traditional Band-Aid was very painful. And it was traumatic, not only for the patient, but also for the caregiver. If you can imagine you're a caregiver to a geriatric unit, and every time you walk into that room, the patient cringes because they know what you're going to do. You're going to rip something off their tender old skin. And they get tense, you get tense, it's a very unpleasant situation. However, if you could use this new adhesive that made it more easily removable, without causing that pain. You have that human component. It won't necessarily be reusable like your original thought, but at least it's not going to hurt that person. The other thing they found out is that maybe in IV situations, you can pull it off and put it back on again instead of having to reapply. But this is just a very simple example of you start out with a guess, you test it, believe when the market tells you that you're wrong about something, do truly believe that and move on to the next area. So what you do with this tool, the business model canvas, you start with your original ones, you conduct your test, and this is what happens when you compare data. You now get a new set of value propositions. You go out in your next set of customer discovery interviews, and through iteration, you ultimately will get to a pretty darn good product market fit in a surprisingly short period of time. And believe it or not, virtually every single team that goes through this program, not just here, but nationwide, is wrong in their first value proposition customer segment match. And this can save you millions of dollars, many years of heartache by not chasing down the wrong pathway simply because you haven't taken the trouble to go out and ask. I'll give a real world example as to why this is valuable. We recently had a transfer of a very high level researcher from UC Davis who has gotten 15 medical devices through FDA approval and in the marketplace. When he learned about this program, he says, oh my gosh, I wish I had this 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. It would have shortened my path of commercialization so much more if I'd just gone out and talked to people in the industry what they actually cared about instead of simply assuming that I knew what they wanted. So the guy's a total rock star. Am I going the wrong way?
No.
Oh, okay. So it gets modified. Our releasable adhesive bandages help geriatric nurses who want to reduce stress by eliminating the pain and anxiety there. You don't see antimicrobial in there. You don't see hydrophobic because those things don't mean anything to somebody who's trying to get this job done. So what they found is a different job to get done for a different customer segment or a very specific customer segment. Okay, talking and listening to your customers helps you understand what people care about. Doing this in person really has a much bigger impact than simply doing a survey. People lie in surveys for the most part. In interviews they can as well. But we learn so much from face-to-face communication. You can tell when people get bored, people are interested, or you just get so much more out of the exchange by doing it in person instead of over the phone or a very anonymous survey. So, a value proposition, it's a simple phrase a person would use to say why they bought something. So try to, when you're constructing your initial value propositions and you have this imaginary customer in your mind, think, okay, they now have your product in their hand, or they have the service you're available at their fingertips ready to use, and they're really enjoying it. You've imagined why they would like to have this. What would they say to you post-purchase? This is why I bought this clicker or jacket or pair of shoes or something like that. That's the value proposition. Take yourself out of it and put yourself in the shoes of your hypothetical customer and then start with that guess. And then we go out and test it. So here's some of the characteristics of a good value proposition. There's a direct benefit to the individual. Concise, shortness is important. We will see in the first classes people have value propositions that are 2 or 3 sentences. No. 1 to 5 words is probably more than adequate most of the time. Specific and quantitative. If you say less expensive, how much? It's $5 less expensive. Paul, if I can save you $50 on your next purchase, are you interested? Okay, it's a house. in Orange County. You're not so interested anymore, right? So it has to be a relevant amount. Is it 20% or is it 5%? I forgot which team we were working with not so long ago, but they had a substantial price savings on their technology over the existing technology in the marketplace. Substantial savings. However, when you look at the entire product that was being purchased, yeah, they had a 90% cost reduction in something that contributed to 5% cost of the entire beast. So you don't really care if you can save 75% on the cost of the cloth that goes into the seat of your cars. That's not going to be a whole lot when it comes to the entire $30,000. Uniquely delivered by your team. So what is it that's special about you and your technology that is different than everybody else, right? That's one of the things that stands out. And going back to what we started to talk about is how would a customer say it? Not how you would say it, how would someone using say it? Because most likely the people that are going to be using your technology don't have the same background that you do. They certainly don't have the same level of technological expertise unless you're making some type of device for a laboratory. Okay, customer segments. Specific, well-defined group of people. We started out with hospitals and doctors. Well, hospitals are never your customer. Never your customer, because hospitals don't buy anything. Purchasing agents do. People within the hospital, but very specific people. And when we use the Band-Aid example, it's not nurses, it's geriatric nurses. Maybe it's also pediatric nurses as well. And it's probably not the doctors. I believe we have a doctor over here. It says attending physician. Do you deal with bandages, or is that primarily somebody else?
I'm not really. I'm in the basket neurosurgeon.
Okay. So yeah, you don't deal with bandages and so forth. So you really have to focus in on who is the person or the type of person that's going to be interested in your technology. So you be very specific. Also, they have to be willing and able to pay. Okay, let's use a really easy example because we all know about Airbnb. So this is an example of what we can look at. Do you guys in the back actually read this?
Yeah. Yes.
Close enough? Okay, you guys are much better than mine. So we actually have two customer segments in Airbnb. You have the host and the guest, right? They're both customers. One way or another, both of those parties are actually giving money in one way or another to Airbnb. So as we look through here, you have different types of hosts. Some people have a house, some people have cabins, etc. By location and also by location type. And then by guests, different types of travel characteristics, different needs, interest, how much money. Some people do Airbnb for the money. It's cheaper for them to do Airbnb than a hotel. Other people use Airbnb. As we can see over the value proposition, we have lower cost. It's really easy to do. Oftentimes, staying in an Airbnb, you can stay in some really cool place that just doesn't exist on the traditional house rental market. You can see ratings, and there's a much larger variety of offerings. So all of these things, both in the hosts and the guests, should ring a bell for you and see that there's no real jargon in any of this up here. Now, of course, it's Airbnb. It's not anything to do with endovascular surgery, but nonetheless, they're plain, simple statements that a host or a guest might use themselves. Keep trying to think about that. It's not, I gotta tell you, it's hard. It's not easy translating your science into plain English. Some people call it dumbing it down. Another way to think about it is that you're being considerate to your audience so that you're not trying to show them how smart you are and how little they know. You want to be able to have an open exchange of information. Okay, so the only way you can do this is the mantra of I-Corps is get out of the building. That means get off campus too. And when you do your customer discovery interviews, don't talk to people whose email address ends in .edu unless your customer segment is the research community. You don't get to talk to your friends. You don't get to interview your mom and so forth. You need to get out of your comfort zone and talk to people who you think are going to want to, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking at first. But so far, how many people have actually died as a function of this process? Very, very few. Only a couple have caught on fire, instantaneously combust. It is a little bit scary at first, but everyone survives, and you learn a huge amount about what the market actually wants and needs and match it to what you can deliver. Okay, so what is this program all about? What are the details of it? It's 4 weeks, once a week, 3 hours, mostly in this room or a room like this right here at Applied Innovation. You do 10 customer discovery interviews every week, not 9, not 8, 10 or more. This is very important. Numbers really, really matter in this. For the most part, in this, you're going to be learning how to do customer discovery. You'll get some pretty decent insights on your value proposition and the customer segment. But for the most part, this is getting you started because realistically, you're going to need to do 50, 100, 200 plus customer discovery interviews. Good companies continue to do customer discovery continually, over and over again, continuing to pull what do people care about and how can we best deliver the maximum value to them. Each week you make a presentation. You make a presentation of, we're team so-and-so, we're working on this technology. We thought this particular group of people would like our technology for this reason, so we went out and we were able to speak to 12 people last week, and this is what we found. I think we have the format up there. Okay, I'll come back to it. Okay, so your slides are going to look like this. You'll have a cover sheet of who you are, your team number of interviews, etc. One sentence blurb in plain English about what your offering is. And then you start with a business model canvas. This is our ideas, bullet point type things. Bullet points again for your customer segment. Just those 2 squares. A lot of people fill out the entire canvas. Knock yourself out if you want to, but what we're going to be looking at is your best guesses on value propositions and your best guess on customer segments. And you want to match those 2 because you may have 2, 3 different customer segments and match those value propositions to the different customer segments. But for the most part, whoops, there's some more. I guess we don't have that one. There's another one we'll show later, I believe, is here's what we thought. This, in plain English, here's our hypothesis. And then a summary of these are the people we went and talked to. We talked to 3 endovascular surgeons. We talked to 4 anesthesiologists and 6 nurses, something like that. And then an overview of this is what we learned from those conversations. This is how we're going to do things different. This is what we're going to do next. And then you repeat the process next week. Every single team presents at every single class, and they call it a flipped classroom. For the most part, you all will be commenting to each other like, I don't understand how you came to that conclusion based on what you just told us about what you heard, or I'm still not understanding why you think that's valuable. It's a highly interactive class. You submit the presentations to us in the morning of the class. Sophia and I will have comments, but it's a very, very class interactive experience. We have a budget of about $2,000 for each team to help reimburse you for the cost of customer discovery. If you've got to drive down to San Diego, parking, etc. This is not money for free lunches and so forth. It's to defray the cost of going to conduct these customer discovery interviews. A great opportunity, it's hard in this short time period, is to find a non-academic conference for a customer segment that's an industry type conference where you can just meet dozens and dozens of people. So anyway, we can get into that a little bit later. And then the big thing, attendance is mandatory. You can't phone this in. You can't just send it in. The team members need to be here in class. We can be slightly flexible if on, say, one of the classes, only one team member could be here, that's okay. But if you're not here engaging and presenting each and every week, you're really not going to get out of this what you need to get out of it. it's no skin off our nose whether you get it or not, but you will be missing out if you don't attend the class and make those presentations. Okay, so the team. Ideally, you'll have 3 people, at least 3 people. Now, they can have interchanging roles, but essentially we need an entrepreneurial lead, one person who is essentially leading the charge, and you can have 2 of these, a co-entrepreneurial lead as well, because you're going to want 2 people in those interviews. One person asking the questions and listening, and the other person really focusing in and listening and jotting down notes like crazy. And then immediately after your interview, go sit down, have a cup of coffee, and quickly review your notes of like, okay, did we really test the hypotheses? What did we get out of this meeting? Summarize it, and then move on to your next interview. We like to have an academic lead. It's great when they can go on the interviews. If they're unavailable to do all or many of the interviews, at least check back in with your academic lead, typically a PI, and say, this is what we thought, this is what we did, this is what we learned, let me share that with you. And then your PI is like a sounding board saying, yeah, that sounds about right. What did they say about this? And if possible, if you have an industry mentor, we're still working on our, it's called Experts in Residence program. We can try to help you find a mentor advisor, but you're going to need 3 people on your team, a minimum of 2 of them showing up at each class. Okay, I'm going the wrong way again. Okay, so what happens when you're done? This is 4 weeks, you've learned a little bit about the marketplace. Now what do I do? What's my next step? So many different pathways. What we found in the very first cohort that we taught fall of 2017 now, was that about 1/3 of the teams were really getting some traction and were really moving forward. They found some great opportunities for more customer discovery interviews, but they just didn't have the time. The conference is in 3 weeks from the end of the class. So we created on the fly an extension program where you can continue to do a customer discovery. You have access to those funds, and every 2 weeks you come in and have a brief one-on-one consult with Sophia and myself, telling us again, this is what I thought, this is who we talked to, this is what we learned, this is what we're going to do next. And that's on a more relaxed schedule, roughly every 2 weeks. So we want 10 interviews every 2 weeks. And I forgot how long we go for, roughly 3 months for that. And then a very brief, like 2-page form type report that you just share with us at the end. Other options. Our in-house Wayfinder incubation program. That's very fascinating. You'll hear more about that in later classes. The POP grant program that I mentioned that Sophia helps run, proof of product, and what's that, on the order of 50 to 100K, roughly for that. We also have an in-house SBIR, free money from the government program, person who can advise on what would potentially be very good SBIR opportunities for you. And a dirty little secret that NSF has been leaking out over the last year or so is teams that go through I-Corps or I-Corps-like programs, but we'll just call it I-Corps, have a 3-time higher success rate in getting that SBIR funding. 3-time higher success rate just by going through this program and learning from that. There's also BioEngine program. Another thing, we have new venture competitions. We have the Student Startup Fund. There's RCOF. So there's money opportunities. There's commercialization opportunities. We also have, this is really pretty cool. It's only been here a few months now. It's called the SBDC, or Small Business Development Consulting. That is a group of seasoned entrepreneurial consultants who are paid by the federal government to give you free advice on how to move your company to the next stage. Doing something like I-Corps is a very good prep before you go to them. Right now, I'm almost certain that no one's quite ready to go to the SBC, but they're just on the other side of this wall. So there's so many different opportunities here to move forward once you're done with this program. We also have kind of what NSF would really like is the opportunity to go onto the national program. Initially, in order to get to the national program, which is a $50,000 grant, 8-week intensive program, you had to have your research funded by NSF. They kind of tapped out that pool, so they found by creating programs like this one here, by completing this, you will have received NSF funding, and therefore you'll be grandfathered in, and we can talk more about the national program a little bit more. But essentially, you do the same customer discovery process, but you march through every single one of those squares in the business model canvas. What NSF found out is in that 8-week program, week 4, 5, and 6, most of the teams were still struggling with the value proposition customer segment matching, but they were forced, due to the pace of the course, to be working on key activities or key partners, but those were probably the wrong activities or the wrong partners because they hadn't made that product market fit match thoroughly at the outset. So this way, you're actually quite well prepared to hit that national program at full speed. Anyway, all sorts of opportunities after that. So we do have assignments before the first class. There's some reading, talking to humans. I keep a copy of this on my table, and people laugh when they walk past my office. It's a free downloadable book, pamphlet almost, easy read. It's a story of 2 researchers who have developed like the world's best pillow. And they're going to take the world by storm, and they think their ideal customer segment is students right out of undergraduate school. Well, what they found out through this cute little story is no, students that have just finished their undergraduate degree are not really interested in spending $100 on a pillow. But they march you through the process of how do you do customer discovery, how do you gain some of these insights, and a lot of it is observing how people do their purchases and what do they base their decisions on. And then we have a list of all sorts of videos that talk about customer discovery, the business model canvas, the interview process, etc. And those are all online. And then you also have to come in with 10 customer leads. The first class, we do not expect you to have completed any interviews whatsoever. None. By the second class, a week later, you have to have those 10 interviews done. No excuses, no exceptions. What was it? No egos, no excuses. That's what Babu taught us in our national program together. No egos, no excuses. And then the deliverables. We talked about the slides. It's actually going to be more slides than this. And these are the course dates. So most of them will be in this room. And we do offer this 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. And you still need to apply by the 25th. Questions? There's got to be some questions. Adrian.
How many teams do you allow?
10. No more than 10. In fact, we will even be modifying each course. We've modified it slightly, and we found that really, this is from feedback from the classes, the teams need more time to present. They need more feedback from the teaching team and also from each other. Beyond 10, we had 11 last time. It just cut things too short. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned 3 hours per week. What day and what time?
4 to 7.
Wednesdays.
4 to 7 p.m. and the dates.
And there's a little handout.
There's a handout with the dates. It's also on the website.
Yeah, Feb 13, 20, 27, March 6.
I think it's Wednesday.
Yes.
Wednesday.
Yeah, they're Wednesdays this term.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Curious, how many teams have moved on to other, either other programs or have actually established their startup?
I don't know how many have an accurate number on startups. I would say, well, there's the team that I went through the national program with, Immunent. They are a cybersecurity software startup. They're doing quite well right now. In fact, they moved out of our building into another facility. We've got another early ICAR, Lexstrom, that is, they're not selling product yet, but they're fairly well along. And I'd say about 20% of the teams, is that about right, have moved on to SBIR funding, the Wayfinder program. Quite a few simply take what they've learned here and go back to their lab to refocus, slightly redirect their research to help solve some of the problems that they've identified that customers really care about. Quiet, Adrian.
Doing customer discovery, I think one of the biggest problems is trying to get just that first initial contact with them.
Yes.
So is that something that you could give a tip to right now before we go through the class? Like what tips would you have in terms of like
On how to get those first, use LinkedIn, use Google. There's Book of Lists is a big booklet like this that comes out, the 2017 to 2018 Book of Lists. Start with who you think your customer segment is. Look for local companies, and you're going to be doing cold calls. One of the things you'll find in customer discovery interviews, just ask a lot of questions. Go broad. Go really, really broad. Because your first couple of weeks, you're really just learning how to get the interviews and conduct them. You'll learn more as you move along. But the last couple of questions in any interview is, what should I have asked you that I didn't? Oftentimes that's when all the super useful information comes out. And the other one is there anyone else that you know that I could talk to? People are very giving in that way. And now what you have is a warm lead. Because now I can go to Paul and say, hi Paul, my name's Doug Crawford. Camilla gave me your name, said that I could talk to you about so-and-so. You don't want to look bad in front of Camilla. So you're probably going to say yes. You also use the student researcher card. I'm a researcher at the University of California. I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm trying to figure out if the research that we're working on is relevant to your field. Would you have 15 minutes sometime later this week to have a cup of coffee or a brief sit down with me? People will almost always give you 15 minutes, and when you get that first, you'll actually probably get half an hour to 45 minutes from there, and then you build from there. The first ones are a little bit tricky, but tell me about your technology very quickly.
I have a wound care device that I'm trying to I'm trying to provide a wound care device.
A wound care device?
Yes.
Okay, what kind of wound?
Bed sores.
Bed sores, right. Okay, so who do you think would be interested in this?
I think first of all the patients, however, part of this issue with bed sores or any type of pressure sores that
Sure, so I'm just going to kind of give the answer here. Bed sores, you can have the patients. Kind of hard to get people who are, bedbound. It's a little hard to get to that. Trying to get nursing homes to let you in, maybe a little bit sketchy, but what about care providers, family, support groups? What about support groups for people? So go on the web. Just start exploring, make some of those first phone calls. I have to warn you, you will get hung up on. People will make appointments and then you get there and there's, oh, I'm sorry, she's not here now, she went out to lunch. Like, I need 2 more interviews. So in order to get those 10 the first week, you'll probably need to make 20 or 30 calls. It does get easier after the first couple weeks because you'll have generated some of those warm leads. Yeah. Yes?
Should all of the interviews be in person or are phone calls okay as well?
Ideally, everything is done in person. It doesn't always work out that way. The order of preference is in person. Second would be Skype. So that way at least you can see their facial expressions. Third is phone. There is no fourth. There's no surveys whatsoever. That does not count at all. Yes, sir.
What do you expect of the presentations? What are you looking for from the groups?
What we're looking for is for you to share the story of, hey, I had an idea that, briefly tell me about your technology.
Analytical testing service for agricultural sector.
Okay, testing for agriculture. And who do you think is a customer segment?
Farmers, producers,
Farmers.
possibly the actual end users.
Okay, and why would a farmer want your technology?
Regulation dictates that they might have to perform some sort of certification in some types of crops.
Okay, so farmers are going to want your technology to avoid penalties due to regulations, something like that. So your presentation would be like this. We felt that farmers would want to use our technology to avoid repercussions from not meeting regulations. What we found out was really the most interesting thing we found out is that a certain segment of the regulations, it doesn't really matter whether they're out of compliance or not. But this area really stands out as something that they're all quite concerned about. They'd love to overcome this problem or get this monkey off their back. A very good example would be one of our teams from last time, the sensor guys. They have a technology that essentially you put it on a surface of any type of structure and it gives you an idea of the health of that structure. As one of the other teams, and actually it was a neurovascular surgeon, said, hey, that's a Fitbit or a wearable for a building. Yep, that's exactly what it is. They thought, oh, the airline industry is going to absolutely love this. Their very first week of interviews, they found out, no, the airline industry hates this. The reason for that is an air carrier, Southwest, has a certain level of compliance that they need to come to. And they do that. If they find something using industry required standards, if they find something wrong with an aircraft using something different above and beyond, they may have to shut down an entire fleet. So it's a liability issue for them to exceed that standard using something new would say, no. We are not going to do that at all. Another group was dealing with water treatment. And one of the most expensive parts of water treatment is something called aeration, blowing bubbles through the dirty water to help the bacteria eat the nasty stuff. And they felt, well, you know how some cars you can see how many miles per gallon you get by stepping on the gas pedal and so forth? They essentially had an MPG meter for their aerator. What they found out by talking to operators in those plants is they don't care about energy costs at all. It doesn't matter to them. That's a pass-through to two other levels of people. And also, their number one job that they had to get done was produce clean water. If they don't produce clean water, if they do something different, they could lose their job. And additionally, they could be arrested because it's a public health issue. So what our guys were offering was something that would complicate their life and potentially lose them their job and land them in jail. So by refining their customer discovery and customer segments, what they found is certain types of water treatment plants of certain size, age, etc., would be very interested in that. But the large established ones wouldn't do it. So in our presentation, we want to hear stories like that. We want to hear about both your failures and success in almost a storytelling type fashion, but using the data, make that data human. That's what we're looking for. So it's roughly 5 to 7 minutes, the presentation, and you'll be interrupted constantly by people in the class and Sophia like, wait, I'm not sure about that. Or what about this? You get a lot of good suggestions from other people in the class as well. Did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Usually UCI students and staff, alumni.
Yes, yeah, it's almost exclusively UCI faculty, grad students, etc. Some affiliation with the university.
A lot of professors come to this program.
A fair number, yeah.
So how about the mentor? Is it necessary to that person is from UCI or another industries?
You can get a mentor any way you can. Once we get to know the different applicants, we can see if we can match to people within what's called our EIR or Experts in Residence program. That's still a work in progress, so we can't necessarily guarantee that we could help you find a mentor. Oftentimes, the PI acts somewhat as a mentor. as well. Quiet group. It's going to be much louder when you join class. It's very active. Any questions? None? None?
Just curious, how many groups are actually here?
We don't know. We had roughly 30 people sign up, so we don't know how people have grouped themselves. So, but this is roughly about the size of a class grouping.
Well, I mean,
Are you guys? Are you three a group?
Oh,
You just met.
if 10 groups get through and there's like less than 10 groups here, just wonder how that.
I'm sorry.
If there are only 10 groups that are accepted and there's less than 10 groups actually here for this mandatory orientation, I just wonder.
Yeah,
There's
that
certainly
we have to get a little bit squishy with that every once in a while. That people don't always read the instructions and they don't get the mandatory. Can you believe that? People don't always read the instructions. We tend to be a little bit stickler about that as we move forward. So sometimes we'll get applications and people say, "Oh, but I didn't do the orientation." And then if they're worthy, we will give them a one-off, maybe 15-minute intro of what our expectations are and what the course is about.
So how much value do you put towards each group actually having IP that is very unique, that their business is centered around?
I wouldn't be too concerned about that right now because there's a decent chance that you're going to be looking at your IP a little bit differently moving forward. It's great to have IP or intellectual property, patents, copyrights, etc. It's great to have some to start with. Oftentimes what teams find out is, yeah, that's a great base, but we're going to need to augment this substantially, and we're going to need to do it in this direction, that direction. It's not key that you have a patent application or record of invention on file.
For the groups that did, is it their own IP that was developed in labs, or they're
It's a
getting
mix.
something from UCI that are trying to license?
It's absolutely a mix. We've had UC-affiliated people that are working with their own intellectual property that is not owned by the university, and we have teams that are using pure UC IP, where they've filed what's called a record of invention with our office, with the tech transfer people, and they either have patent applications or occasionally even an issued patent. That's more rare to have an issued patent because that takes several years.
So I guess, what are you looking for in a team to be selected then?
Commitment to the program, that you will show up, you will do the 10. We use, this is a shame-based course. That if you don't show up and you don't do the interviews, the entire class is going to boo and miss you. Sophia's going to give you really nasty sneers. Yeah, in the plus sense, there is a lot of support from the other class members, but we want teams who are committed. They're not just going to show up for one class. They're going to be here for all 4 classes, and they're going to do the work. You really will get so much benefit. It's hard. The first couple of weeks are particularly hard trying to get those interviews because there's pressure to get those 10. If you come in with 8 the first week, we're like, everyone else did it so far. Of the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've done 4 complete cohorts now, us together, and I think 2 teams didn't make their numbers. 1 team completely crashed and burned. And 1 other team just came up a little bit shy. Otherwise, everybody else got those numbers or exceeded them. And an interesting little tidbit. Last year sometime, the directors of this entire nationwide program came out to review our site to see how we were doing and so forth. And the director asked me, how many customer discovery interviews do you think it takes to get really meaningful insights? And I started to give them the politically correct answer. What I thought he wanted to hear was, oh, well, it's 30, because that's what we require in this class. And I thought back like, no, it's 60. It's right about 60. And the national trends have shown that as well, that right around 60, up to 40, 50, you're still kind of getting the grasp of what learnings or insights or aha moments are you getting from this customer discovery process? The national program that Sophia and I both been through, that's 100, 15 a week, every week for 7 weeks. No egos, no excuses. You think you're going to explode. And literally after 4.5 weeks, you start getting some super, super valuable insights. For example, the first team I took through the national program as the mentor, they're working in cybersecurity, and they finally got a super high level interview. And by the way, don't try to go to the CEO or the CTO of your absolutely ideal company or customer your very first week or two, because you're going to blow those interviews. Go for the lower value ones at first. Anyway, for this particular team, right around week 6, they got a high level interview, and they were breaking the rules a little bit in terms of talking about their technology. And the gentleman looked over their idea and said, wow, this is gorgeous, this is beautiful, this is so elegant. No one's ever going to use it. No one's ever going to use it. The reason no one was ever going to use it is it required changing code at what's called the compiler level, which is extraordinarily difficult to do. So after he completely burst their bubble, he said, no one's going to use it the way you're doing it right now. What you need to do is follow this pathway, get some other people behind you, do some open source market building, and from that way, we could be very good partners with you. If they had not gotten that interview, they would still be struggling to try to get their very first customer. Right now, they've got 5 employees and are doing quite well because they took the time to go through that process. You'll still learn a lot in 30 interviews, and hopefully you'll get so motivated that it's like, yeah, I need to do, the teams that get it realize, I need to do a lot more of this, but this has given me a really good insight that I was going in the wrong direction. Sometimes just a slightly wrong direction, but sometimes 180 degrees off. Another one, I really like sharing this one. A team here from UCI, a neurosurgeon, electrical engineer, and biomechanical engineer working on a computer-brain interface to help paralyzed people walk again. Got an $8 million grant, moving forward on it. It's pretty cool. Through customer discovery, they had a couple of V8 aha moments. What they found was that both the patients and caregivers, the number one thing they ask for is, give me the ability to transfer. Meaning, give me the ability to get from my bed to my chair by myself, and I'm golden. That's all I need. Can you imagine how much easier that is to achieve that goal as opposed to full locomotion standing up for someone who's been paralyzed? The second thing they learned, and then, of course, give me control of my bladder again. Oftentimes with paralysis, you lose control of your bladder. That's not a very dignified life. If you have to have someone help change your diapers every time you have to go to the bathroom, if you could remove that burden from them, think about how you'd be improving their life. Because of that, these researchers changed the course of their research to focus on achieving some more short-term goals, because I can guarantee you there's no way they're making paralyzed people walk on an $8 million grant. It's going to take them a decade to get to that. So they have found a more successful pathway while still going for that brass ring, but something that's actually more reasonable and achievable in the time frame of what they're looking at. See some nodding heads and interest and so forth. Anybody sufficiently scared? Yeah, you are. Good, good. A little fear is good. We'll try to keep the shame down. And the fear down, we'll try to make it as easy and productive as possible. Okay, well, that's our session. If you don't feel like asking a question out loud, feel free to come up and talk to Sophia and I individually afterwards. And we hope to see your applications. And anytime, please feel free to reach out to Sophia and or myself by phone, email, etc. If you want to come meet, we're happy to talk to you about that. If you have questions about the application, don't just send it in. Give me a call. Send me an email. Be happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.